us. And then he reworked those into these very moving cantatas. He knew what he was doing. He was a master at what I would call mimetic engineering. He was great at redesigning musical artifacts to strum every chord in every person's heart.
But I would not dare put myself in Brahms's mind. But don't you think he was reaching for a spiritual, what he called a spiritual response, not a biological response? I want to make sure I understand that difference.
Of course he was. Spiritual in the sense of having to do with your mind and what you know, your culture, the ideas, the stories that matter to you and why. We all of us, we start with our language, our mother tongue. This shapes our minds in unimaginably many ways. We imbibe stories, folklore, the Bible, the Quran, whatever the texts are, but also everything else. Television, George Washington and the cherry tree, all of this lore furnishes our minds, and it's all available to be spoken to be rung in by poets, composers, preachers. Preachers are, I think that a really good preacher is like a jazz musician, is playing the old standards, but always changing them, always adding, and surprising the congregation with a few new riffs, and leaving out the parts that didn't go over so well when he did that same bit a few years ago. And so all of these traditions evolve over time, sometimes very deliberately, when a church will decide to simply abandon some part of the liturgy or even stop putting those verses of the Bible in any of their readings. You know perfectly well that most of the verses of the Bible are never going to be read out in church because they don't speak to people today.
But in church, the preacher's sermon, the music, all leads to the invocation of God. And I listen to you, as I listen to you, I wonder, are you saying that God is essentially a linguistic contrivance to respond to the biological?
No. I'm saying that the word God is, of course, a linguistic contrivance. It's a word. And that word has been honored so much, has been treated so special, that of course some religions say you're not supposed to name God. But that's
I am who I am.
That's in fact the same tradition, just with a mirror in front of it. It's still a sort of creating a fetish around the word, and as you know, today hardly any two people agree on what they mean by God. And this creates, in fact, I think, a sort of preposterous illusion where people say, well, we're not atheists because we all believe in God. But if you went around and asked the people around the table, well, what do you mean by God? What do you mean by God? What do you mean by God? You'd find it was all different. This is a bad pun. This isn't something that they all believe in.
What do they believe in?
They believe in belief.
Belief?
They believe that belief in God is so important that you should never even think about abandoning it, even if you have to change what you mean by God so much that it's just unrecognizable to somebody else. But then at least everybody can go around and say, well, I still believe in God.
Well, I believe in democracy.
Me too.
Do you believe in God?
No. Well, which God? I don't believe in the Old Testament God. I certainly don't believe in Yahweh. I don't believe in the God that created all creatures great and small. We have no need for a creator God to explain the evolution of the biosphere. Do I believe in Tillich's ground of all being?
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What is the ground?
What is the ground? I don't know if I believe in it. If I knew what it was.
The unanswerable question.
Well,
God is the unanswerable question.
But maybe you see, for some people, God is whatever it is that created all this wonderful life. Well, in that case, I believe in God because I believe in evolution. And that is what created all of this.
Do we have a ground of our being?
Sure. We inhabit a spectacularly wonderful physical universe. It has evolved over billions of years, and life has evolved on this planet for billions of years, and here we are. And it is so wonderful to be alive, to have the privilege of being part of this amazing scene, and it would be nice to be able to say thank you to somebody. I feel gratitude, but there's nobody to thank, so the best I can do is resolve to make the planet a little better for the next person.
In one of your earlier books, you in fact said the world is sacred.
Yeah.
What did you mean by that? All?
Just what I just said. I mean, this is something worth devoting yourself to. This is something worth devoting your life to. Protecting this, preserving it, honoring it, understanding it, studying it, with a sense of awe. We don't, I mean, Anselm notoriously, famously, defined God
early
as
philosopher in the Christian church.
The
right.
being greater than which nothing can be conceived. It's a very hard phrase to get your head around. The most perfect, imaginable being. Well, now, is the universe itself the being greater than which nothing can be conceived? Well, it's greater than I can conceive. It's greater than any one person, scientist or cosmologist or philosopher can conceive. If that's what God is, then I believe in it, and I believe that it outstrips my understanding.
But you said a moment ago that you wanted to express gratitude. You want to say thanks in response for this marvelous universe.
Yeah.
But a lot of people need to thank some being, someone.
Well,
right?
Why?
I said, no, don't they?
Well, do they? Why? I think they do, but why?
Well, that's what I ask you. You wrote the book, Breaking the Spell.
Well, I think actually the answer to that is quite clear. An instinct that we share with mammals in general is when something that we don't understand happens, when something startling or surprising or worrisome happens, the most natural thing in the world, it's really instinctual, is to go, who's there? Who's there? And what do you want? Not what's that, but who's there? Why? Because sometimes there's somebody there, and that somebody might want you. So when you're startled, looking for an agent, looking for a being that has beliefs and desires, looking for a being that's conscious, is a very good strategy, even if you have a lot of false alarms. So your dog does it. The snow falls off the roof and lands with a thud outside the window, and your dog jumps up and growls, looks around. That's the very same instinct in the dog that we have. The difference is that in us, it doesn't stop with just looking around and then going back to sleep. It echoes and echoes and echoes. And so we begin to populate our world with imaginary, invisible agents. Their who is there. And that initial population explosion of, that's not religion, that's just superstition. That's goblins and leprechauns and elves and things like that. But they are the ancestors in idea space of the few gods, and then eventually the monotheistic God that gets the name God with a capital G.
So you're saying religion evolved?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that what you mean when you say the subtitle of Breaking the Spell is religion as a natural phenomenon?
Of course. Of course religion evolved. The religion of today is very different from the religion of 2,000 years ago. It's as different or more than the music of today is different from the music of 2,000 years ago. Music is a natural phenomenon. It didn't always exist. It's existed for thousands of years. It's evolved all along. That's cultural evolution. Language is a natural phenomenon. Didn't always exist. It came into existence. It's evolved. It's still evolving. Music, language, religion, it's another natural phenomenon. Didn't always exist. It's, as phenomena go, it's quite a young phenomenon. It's younger than, organized religion is younger than agriculture, which is only about 10,000 years old. Language is older than religion. Music is probably older than religion.
So then are you saying that people believe because they've been programmed to believe?
Programmed? Do you believe that cheese is tasty because you've been programmed to believe? You've tasted it and you like it? And I mean, we